Huh, looks like there's a new playlist in Halo Infinite to commemorate Halo 2's 20th anniversary. It's Halo 2's 20th anniversary? So yeah, this kinda snuck up on me. It feels like just last year, 343 celebrated Halo 2's 10th anniversary with a really solid remake in the form of Halo 2 Anniversary. Well, at least the single player was solid. The multiplayer was just a heavily modded version of Halo 4's multiplayer, and the whole thing was unfortunately tied to the not-so-stellar launch version of the MCC. Of all the Halo games, I'd argue Halo 2 is the one most worth celebrating, honestly, as it's potentially the most important of all of them. While Combat Evolved was obviously the first and was a major system seller to boot, Halo 2 was really the game that made Halo, well, Halo. It expanded the universe, improved the gameplay, and brought the art style closer in line to what we now associate with the series. Combat Evolved was a hit, but Halo 2 proved that this series had franchise potential. That being said, it wasn't all smooth sailing. The development of the game was rough, and that's putting it lightly. It really is a miracle this game came out at all, let alone become what it ended up being. Halo 2 started development immediately after the first game became a runaway success. At first, the team at Bungie didn't have very lofty ambitions for a sequel. In fact, they didn't even have plans for a sequel at all. Initially, many devs at the studio proposed they make something easy for a follow-up, just taking existing assets and scrapped ideas and just reworking them into a new story. This idea didn't last too long though, as many more devs at the studio wanted to do something more. So many ideas were bounced around between people that it was clear that a simple rehash wouldn't suffice. The team saw the potential of Halo's universe and wanted to take advantage of it, along with the much bigger financial backing from Microsoft. What they didn't realize at the time was that they were about to bite off way more than they could reasonably chew. Throughout 2002, Bungie worked on completely reworking Halo's framework, from physics to shaders to everything else in between. Meanwhile, they were also hard at work implementing new mechanics into the game, like dual-wielding weapons and the ability to hijack vehicles, along with sprinting, destructible environments, a cover system, deeper combo-based melee combat, and much, much more. As the amount of ideas grew, so did the team, in which new members brought in even more new ideas, which just repeated the whole cycle. The game was set to have a bigger story, bigger levels, more weapons, more vehicles. Their goal was to triple everything that Halo Combat Evolved was. The feature creep in just the first year of the game's development quickly got out of hand, and before they knew it, E3 2003 was just mere months away, and they were expected to have a demo ready. Now, they could have just done what everyone else did at E3 and just have some pre-rendered trailer that may or may not have anything to do with the final product, but once again, Bungie's ambition got the better of them. They wanted to have a fully functional gameplay demonstration ready by the time of the expo. After a year of planning, it was finally time to lock in and get to work. When E3 finally came around, the excitement was palpable. Xbox had a closed-off section of the show floor where they invited people to watch Joseph Staten play a full level of Halo 2, starting off with a briefing from none other than Sergeant Avery Johnson himself.
No smoke and mirrors pre-recorded bullshit.
It was smoke and mirrors pre-recorded bullshit. Kinda. The level in the demo was technically being played in real time, but it was heavily scripted and far more linear than it appeared. The whole demonstration was less of a live playthrough and more of a stage performance, with Joe here just following a script to make the game seem more complete than it sadly actually was. For instance, they wanted to give players the ability to trade weapons with the Marines, but the mechanic hadn't been implemented yet. So instead, they added a moment in the demo where a Marine offers the player his gun, and after the dialogue, Joe would simply switch to his secondary to make it appear like they just traded weapons. That being said, smoke and mirrors or not, the demo did its job. People were hyped.
Master Chief jumped up the goat, kicked the enemy down and got on it. It was over. It was game over after that.
Jumping on the goats definitely surprised you ever the first time there. Because everybody remembers getting run over by those things.
You blow something up and the guy crawls out and he's still alive. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that as far as I'm concerned.
It seemed like a war, like a real battle.
I went to see it twice just to make sure that it wasn't the exact same thing, and it was totally different this time.
I don't say the word awesome. Usually dude doesn't come out of my mouth. But the truth is, the game is awesome, dude.
In the end, Bungie would leave E3 right back where they started, still at square one, as most of what they worked on ended up being thrown out. The demo was designed from the get-go to be a demo, and nothing within that build could realistically be reused within a full game. All the scripting was nonsense spaghetti code solely designed to work in the extremely specific context of the demo itself and not much else. The build wasn't a game as much as it was just an elaborate magic trick. Everything down to the lighting engine would end up being reworked reworked from the ground up all over again. That being said, it did help the team consolidate and reevaluate what they could reasonably add to the game. So with that, melee combos were out, the cover system was out, sprint was out, for now, and concepts for level designs were scaled back to a reasonable size. Not as linear as the demo, but not massive either. It was clear at this point that what Bungie had planned for this game simply wouldn't be able to run on the Xbox. The game was simply too big and ambitious to run on 3-year-old hardware at that point, and Microsoft was starting to loom over them more and more as the deadline approached. See, Microsoft had just launched their subscription-based online service Xbox Live, and they knew the one thing that it was missing to really pull people into the service was a shiny new Halo game. So the pressure was on for Bungie to get the game out by November 2004, just a little over a year away to make the campaign they wanted to make while also crafting a satisfying online multiplayer experience to help sell Microsoft's new service. Suffice to say, I don't envy them. For the next 5 months, the people at Bungie would work day and night reevaluating the work they've done and making massive cuts to the planned project. The most controversial being the 3 final levels that would culminate to the originally planned ending of the game, leading to the final release ending on a cliffhanger. This was all strategic though. They wanted to ensure that the final release was as polished as it could possibly be. And if that means cutting content, then so be it. It's better to release a smaller and more focused game than it is to release a broken and unfinished one, even if the broken game has a more conclusive and satisfying ending. For 10 whole months, Bungie was crunching harder than any other studio had crunched before, or possibly even after, which is really saying something. It was all hands on deck to design, program, write, animate, playtest, and finalize this project that so much was riding on. Everyone was well aware that this one game was make or break for the future of Halo, Xbox, and Bungie as a company itself. It didn't just have to be good, it had to be the best game ever. Co-founder of Bungie, Jason Jones, would later go on to describe working on Halo 2 as assembling a cathedral out of a hurricane, which certainly sounds accurate. If you need any more proof of the team's dedication, on the night before the game was supposed to ship, Joseph Staten was still in the office putting some last-minute finishing touches on Miranda Keyes' facial animations in the final cutscene of the game. Down to the literal last minute, everyone was hell-bent on making this game as perfect as it could possibly be for players. Leonardo da Vinci once said, "A painting is never finished, only abandoned." And Halo 2 was a shining example of how that saying also applies to video games. If they didn't have a hard deadline, they easily could have worked on this game forever, and Halo 2 would have just become another myth of gaming, like Star Citizen, Half-Life 3, or Beyond Good and Evil 2. On the day of Halo 2's release, it was complete pandemonium. City blocks were packed with people as they waited outside stores to get their hands on a copy. Even before the game released, it had already broken sales records with 1.5 million sales in pre-orders alone. The game ended up making $125 million in sales in just the first 24 hours alone, breaking entertainment retail records at the time and eventually going on to forever cement itself as the best-selling game on the original Xbox. So, after all that effort, how is the game? It's Halo 2! What do you think? Unlike the first game, Halo 2's narrative is split between 2 protagonists, our old pal Master Chief and an elite Sangheili warrior named Thel 'Vadamee, or Thel 'Vadam, but he's better known as the Arbiter. The first cutscenes of the game do an amazing job framing the 2 narratives, flipping between Chief attending an award ceremony being applauded as a savior of humanity, and Thel attending a trial being accused of heresy for allowing the humans to destroy the sacred ring. It's a beautifully composed sequence that immediately gives you all the information you need about these 2 protagonists, and players at the time hated it. A surprising amount of people just couldn't fathom why they would pull attention away from Chief and spend time with the guys that they just spent the last game killing. Not to mention that the politics of the Covenant drew a lot of unfair comparisons to the Star Wars prequels, because Star Wars has done so much damage to the sci-fi genre that you can't even have political intrigue in your story anymore without some idiot chiming in and saying it sucks because it reminds them of Jar Jar. It's really a shame because of the 2 stories, the Arbiter's is undoubtedly the more interesting one. Chief's side of the story is typical Master Chief coolness. What begins as an attempt to push back against a Covenant invasion on Earth leads to the discovery of yet another Halo ring, which leads to Chief assassinating one of the Prophets, which leads to his path converging with the Arbiter. Meanwhile, Arbiter's journey is a journey of discovery. It tells the story of a disgraced warrior having his beliefs questioned as he begins to recognize the corruption of the system he's vowed to fight for. Arbiter's story also goes a long way to show how disjointed the Covenant actually are, how the whole group is quickly falling apart. Notice how you never fight humans in the Arbiter levels. You're only ever fighting either the Flood or other Covenant. The Prophets don't exactly help matters either, mind you, considering halfway through the game they order the complete extermination of the Sangheili race so they can replace them with Jiralhanae brutes like Tartarus. Bell Fatomy's story is what changed Halo from a fun sci-fi romp to cool no-nonsense cyborg action hero into a space opera with hundreds of moving parts and intricate politics to get lost in. It made Halo a universe with the potential to rival Star Wars, or dare I say, even Lord of the Rings. Halo simply wouldn't be Halo without the flesh that the Arbiter's perspective gives to the story. Now, while I find Arbiter's story to be more compelling, I do find his missions to be ever so slightly weaker than our buddy John. Although maybe that just has to do with the fact that the majority of RB's levels have to do with the Flood, which I've never been a big fan of if I'm being honest. But with that, it's best to move on to finally touching on the gameplay. The gameplay of Halo 2 is good, but a bit rough in some places. But in a cool way? Whew, that was close. I almost said that I think Halo 2's gameplay sucks. Oh no! Okay, jokes aside, I don't actually think Halo 2's gameplay sucks. In many ways, in terms of weapon balancing, physics, and scripting, it's a massive step up from Halo Combat Evolved. The Magnum isn't this overpowered hand cannon that can double tap anything anymore, so you have more incentive to scavenge for more weapons instead of relying on your pocket nuke for every encounter. The additions to the sandbox are amazing too. While the assault rifle from the first game is gone, its place within the sandbox was essentially split between two separate weapons: the BR-55 battle rifle for long-range encounters and the M7 caseless SMG for mid-range encounters. Both are very fun additions to the sandbox, but nowhere near as fun as the fact that for the first time in the series, players could finally wield the Energy Sword, a weapon that elites use in Combat Evolved but wasn't able to be wielded by the player until now, and would later go on to be an iconic weapon in the series and a staple of the sandbox in all future games. The addition of dual wielding was fun too. Sacrificing your melee attack and grenades for more firepower made for an interesting strategic trade-off during the heat of combat. It was also just fun mixing and matching weapon combos. Having a plasma weapon in one hand to strip shields, while wielding an SMG in the other to deal with the squishy bits, makes for some good, family-friendly carnage. That being said, in many ways you can tell that this product was made from start to finish in less than a year. The most prolific example of the game's rushed nature is the infamously unforgiving legendary difficulty. I don't think I even have to mention the jackal snipers that can hide in the corners of levels and insta-kill you in those higher difficulties. The mode was just so ball-bustingly hard that playing the difficulty with all the skull modifiers on was considered practically unbeatable until just 2 years ago when the Twitch streamer Jervelin beat the whole legendary campaign with all skulls on without dying once. Beating the game on this difficulty at all is a Herculean task, and the reason is simple: it's just not fair. Sadly, the balancing of the highest difficulty of the game was just an oversight that got lost in the shuffle of fine-tuning everything else. Does this mean that the game sucks? Of course not, but it does mean the game lacks a sweet spot for some players, as normal and below feels too easy while legendary feels like a saw trap. While the game does have a lot of polish, it was inevitable that some things were just gonna slip through the cracks. This also means that despite Bungie's diligence, there are still some bugs in the game. That being said, while the game is technically buggy, the bugs that weren't polished out almost make for a better experience if anything. There are countless videos out there of people trying to break the game in increasingly absurd ways. Messing with the physics engine, forcing vehicles into areas they shouldn't be in, breaking level boundaries. The thing is, you have to go out of your way to break the game like this, so none of it affects the average playthrough, but it does make speedruns extremely entertaining to watch. There are some bugs that do affect gameplay though, but in a cool way in the form of button combos. The most infamous being BXR and sword flying. BXR is a fan term for an animation bug where you melee an enemy player, quickly cancel out of the melee animation by reloading, and then finish off the player with a single shot from a battle rifle. While sword flying is a bug having to do with the Energy Sword's lunge ability, allowing players to combine the lunge of the Energy Sword with the range of any other weapon in the game by rapidly switching between the two before firing, basically allowing you to literally fly across the map. These combos remind me a ton of Super Smash Bros. Melee. In fact, a lot about Halo 2 reminds me of Melee. Just like Halo 2, Melee was also a game that had a troubled development and ended up being rushed out the door with bugs. But said bugs didn't hinder the game and instead added more depth to it. Fans not only accepted the bugs, they celebrated them and the competitive edge that it gave to the game. Speaking of competition, Halo 2's multiplayer, much like its predecessor, was revolutionary. Xbox Live was quite literally a game changer. Halo 2 introduced pre-game lobbies for players to hang out in before a match. It allowed players to party up with friends. It also introduced skill-based matchmaking, pre-game lobbies, integration with a website for you to look up your stats, pre-game lobbies. For the love of God, bring back pre-game lobbies. These concepts are the standard for online games now, but Halo 2 was the game that did it first. It's clear that Bungie knew that Halo 2 would end up being Xbox Live's killer app, and put special care into making it the best online experience possible. While Combat Evolved revolutionized console shooters, Halo 2 revolutionized online gaming as a whole. It also can't be understated just how much Halo 2 popularized competitive gaming and esports. Gaming tournaments had existed for decades prior. Even Atari hosted a few back in the day. But Halo 2 was the first time these tournaments were aired on TV, specifically the Boost Mobile MLG tournaments, which aired on the USA Network and G4 from 2006 to 2007. Halo 2 made the idea of a pro gamer a real thing someone could aspire to be, and whether you think that's cool or pathetic is entirely up to you. Halo 2 really is a miracle of a game. It was just as, if not even more innovative than its predecessor. It expanded the universe to new heights, it improved on the gameplay in nearly every way, and made all of it more accessible to even more people through online multiplayer. And these madmen managed to do all that in one of the most hellish development schedules in gaming history. This game couldn't have been made if it weren't for the genius of people like Joseph Staten, Jason Jones, Marcus Leto, Marty O'Donnell, Max Hoberman, and so many others. They did the impossible. It was back-breaking work, but they did it. And the realm of gaming would never be the same again. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, leave a like and become a pyromaniac yourself by subscribing. Until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.